Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in and welcome to the channel. This is Lockup Legends and Lessons. Tonight I wanted to go over contraband items in prison and why some of these particular items are not allowed. Keep in mind, this list is not written in any particular order. It's just as it came to me and I wrote them down for my reference. So let's go ahead and start with the first item I have on my list of contraband items in prison: baby oil. Now, baby oil used to be sold in the prison commissary because a lot of people would use it for skin care. You got a lot of guys with just dry skin, etc. When they really like their baby oil, they didn't want to use Vaseline or anything like that. And it was a common item. So why would that be on a list of non-allowables? Some of you know I got locked up at a pretty young age, and I was very green to prison culture. I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know you could call it the hidden culture that goes on in there that's just not really something that's talked about as often. But baby oil was one that confused me. I was like, why can't we have baby oil? That's kind of weird. It just, I mean, is we have Vaseline, what's the big difference? The difference between baby oil and Vaseline is extraordinary and frightening. If you're to take baby oil, put it into a microwave or some other kind of heat source and get this thing extraordinarily hot, it becomes something that's a actually terrifying weapon. It's like how people throw acid in people's faces across the globe. You hear these stories, people just getting doused with some kind of corrosive, and it disfigures and scars them. That's the same thing that baby oil does. Once it gets all heated up, it sticks to your skin for one, and two, it will melt your skin off like Raiders of the Lost Ark. That makes it pretty easy to use if you want to get to somebody with it, because you can walk around with it sitting inside of your coffee cup all day long. People have cups of coffee walking around on the tier, the block, the unit, wherever you're at. And it's not some kind of alarm raising thing when you see somebody walking around with a cup of coffee. So it's very easy to essentially go up and in a way act like an assassin, and you just walk up with your hot baby oil, got this thing heated up so hot. If it catches their face, it doesn't wipe and wash off. It will melt your skin and you'll have permanent damage from it. And this stuff will disfigure you for the rest of your days. I knew a couple of guys who had some pretty severe skin damage, and I never went to ask them about it because, let's be honest, you don't go asking somebody about something. Hey man, why do you look like a melted piece of cheese? I don't think they're going to take that too well, so I just kind of like sat on my curiosity and didn't go inquiring of others. If I started to ask people and then word got back to them, they might feel some kind of way. And who knows if they've got some baby oil tucked away for a rainy day. So therefore, I didn't ask, but there's a couple guys that had been locked up over 20 years, and they were pretty messed up. There were some major scars and damage on them, and they just melted. So I don't know if it was a fire or something that they maybe came into prison like that, or if somebody ended up getting to them. But for that reason, baby oil is a completely contraband item in the state prison system. Next item on my list is dental floss. Dental floss is something that I really highly sought after when I was in the county jail, because I spent just under a year sitting in county waiting to get to prison, which is some pretty slow time and you don't have access to a lot of stuff. It's one of the reasons I couldn't wait to actually start doing my time within the prison system, because we had more freedom and amenities. And one of the ones for me was dental floss, as weird as that sounds, but you value taking care of your teeth in there because prison dentistry is on a whole nother level of something that you don't want to be a part of. So you want to take care of those chompers the best you can, because they're not going to get taken care of otherwise. And the reason dental floss is not allowed in prison is because it is essentially a choke wire. Think about like the movies you've seen where people get a piano string and they wrap it around somebody. Unless you get your hand in there beforehand to protect yourself, and they get a good grip on you, there's no coming back from that. You're not going to tear it. You're not going to rip it. And unless you got some kind of a razor blade, you're pretty much screwed. It's choke wire. It can be used as a garrote, which is it's like a string with handles that you can wrap somebody with. But they would just go ahead and get some gloves, whatever, get a whole bunch of dental floss, spool it out, wrap it around your hands, and that's choke wire right there. If somebody gets to you with a bunch of dental floss, you're going to have a bad day. I challenge you to go to your medicine cabinet or your bathroom, get some dental floss out, pull it out, try to rip it. Go ahead and just try to rip that apart and see what happens. The stuff it's very strong, it's very durable, it's hard to break, and for that reason people had to remove it. The officers had to remove it from the commissary because there's people getting choked to death, or just if they're surviving, they're still getting attacked and choked. And one of the reasons I think they get rid of it is not because they care as much about inmate safety. I truly believe it's because of officer safety. You know, a lot of times they'll just turn the other way when they see certain things happening. But if it's something that can be used against them, they'll cite safety, whatever. There goes your dental floss. When in the county jail, I needed the floss because you get something stuck in your teeth or whatever. You don't have any options, so if you can, you go ahead and get some sewing thread. Wrap it over a couple of times, and then you do what you got to do. You got to get that, get that mess out. If you got something bothering you, whatever, you would just use just regular sewing thread. But after the county jail, they have a couple different alternatives to dental floss. One was a thing called Floss loops, which I saw for a while. They were just these really tiny, skinny, flimsy pieces of like rubber, and they were notorious for breaking in between your teeth, and then you'd have pieces stuck in there. So you'd have to double those up the best you could because they were so flimsy and weak just to get the leftover piece of like rubbery plastic out from in between your teeth. It was a nasty feeling, so I was really glad when they did away with those in my institution, and they came out with these right here. These are like floss picks. You might have seen them. Probably something you would get at a diner, or you might see in your grandparents' house or whatever, but it's just that little tiny piece so you can do what you got to do with it. When it came out with these, I was actually super excited. I prefer dental floss because you could, just take care of your teeth like a human being. But since people couldn't be trusted with it, these is what they had. Next on the list is the combination lock. This was something that you needed for your locker so people wouldn't go through and just root through your stuff if you're not around. They usually give you something to secure your property. And I went through prison several years ago. I've been home for many years now. And things were different back then. They used to sell you a combination lock. You could buy it from the commissary. And it was actually heavily registered. They were registered and regulated, essentially. It was the closest thing you'd have to like a firearm registry in prison. If you go to buy a combination lock, it was seen as a potential weapon. But they needed locks. You needed to be able to secure your property because theft would lead to more violence, and you could have an all-out gang war. I've seen factions go at it over a sweatshirt that was picked up in the yard by another group, and it was nuts. It was absolutely mayhem after that. So they don't want to deal with that kind of stuff all the time. So after you purchase your lock, they go ahead and there's a serial number on the back of these. They're combination locks. There's no key locks because the metal, you're not going to be able to walk around with a piece of metal. So remember your combination. There's a serial number on the back, and the reason for that, let me show you mine. This was my actual prison lock this is the one that I used on my locker all these years ago. It was thing's durable. This should be a shout out to Master Lock for making a tough product, but I've had this thing for 2 decades now, and It's just a basic combination lock. But here you can see there's a serial number on the back. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's etched in right there. They would take that. So I worked in the commissary, so I got to see some of this. When you'd sell a lock, they would come back and they would have to go to the back. They'd get their ledger book out, take it, write the combination down in case they needed to get into it without snipping anything. So they could just get into your stuff at any time if they really wanted to, the police. But the registry number, the serial number on the back, if somebody got whacked with one of these things, they knew who to trace it back to. You couldn't have just a bunch of anonymous locks floating around the place because that's going to promote a lot more violence anyway. So the locks, they were used as a bludgeoning weapon, and it had such a nice ring to the name that everyone knew what it was. It's called a lock and a sock, which is real simple. It sounded like Dr. Seuss got violent, but I'm telling you, man, you take a lock and you put it into, get you a pair of socks, take one. This is how easy it is to go smash somebody and ruin their life. Boom. And that's that. You tie it off in the end right here, just knot it up a little bit, and you swing this thing up on somebody, man, they're going down. I watched a dude get hit in the face with a lock and a sock. Excuse me, I didn't see it happen. I saw the immediate aftermath one time, like just right in front of me. I'm walking back to my housing unit. A guy popped the door open. We're all coming back from chow, and he came out. So when that door hits hard like that, you jump back because there's usually someone coming through it fast and furious for a reason. Dude, man, was holding his teeth, and all this blood was just rushing out of his face. It was almost like black. It was so thick, and it was just coming out of his face. He got hit in the face. Lock and sock was the story afterwards, and he was right off my tier actually, and he got cracked right in the face with this thing, and it just devastated him. I never saw him again after that. He got moved out of the jail. I actually talk about him in another video. He ended up getting killed off of a bad bone. Somebody thought he was snitching, but he wasn't. He was just stupid. So, hey man, it's the law of the jungle in there. People just act crazy. You gotta watch yourself even when you're not doing anything. So dude got a lock in the sock to the face, and when this thing hits you, you're gonna feel it. Like, you're gonna feel it. You can double up the sock and come in. I mean, I've seen a few different ways. You can hold it tight, like this, right up tight, crack, crack, hit on somebody, or double lock it and you start swinging this thing around. You get a little momentum going with it, and if you swing that just right and crack somebody, I mean, you could kill them. It's simple as that. So they had to register these things. They had serial numbers on them for a reason, you know. It was just a pretty barbaric thing, but, you know, always heard about the lock and the sock. And you don't want to be on the wrong end of that, for sure. So if you see somebody drop a sock out of their pocket in the hallway or in the foyer, chow hall, yard, rec hall, shower, anything, man, you better knuckle up. Sometime after I left that institution and my security level was decreased, and I was able to work through the system from maximum down to medium to, I bypassed medium. Went from maximum to minimum to pre-release to work release, which was actually the goal if you got to do time. So they ended up phasing out these big giant master locks in favor of small tiny little bike locks. They were about this big around, and they had a small piece of cable around it. They're very lightweight, very easy to break into stuff too. I mean, you could honestly just twist it, just keep twisting this thing. If you put like a toothbrush in there, and just start twisting it around, you could just twist it like this, and after a certain point, that tension will just snap the thing. So they're very cheap, they're very flimsy, and you can get your stuff ripped off real easy if you're not paying attention. But people weren't getting hit with those, so that's what they did. They went from the nice master locks to those little chintzy bike locks that you could get for, I don't know, maybe $2.99 over at Dollar General. So it was something that they switched up and changed. And a lot of the things I'm talking about, they don't have anymore in the system. They just don't have. These are changes that I watched happen throughout my 7.5 years. And it was just neat to watch. Like, I was like, daggone, man. Like, they're taking this from us. They're taking my lock now. It's like, daggone, man. Dental floss? That actually got better, but it still wasn't real dental floss. So you just go without. And it's always because somebody messes it up for everyone else. So next item on the list is similar to the combination lock in the way that it was misused. And I'm talking about canned goods. Cans of tuna, cans of chili. You could get some beefaroni or whatever, Chef Boyardee kind of product, you know. And the most common, the big can that we would get was jack mackerel. It was just fish that needed to be deboned and skinned, but it was cheap and you got a lot more bang for your buck compared to, you know, $1 can of tuna. You pay 76 cents for a can of Jack Mac, and these are old prices from way back in the day. So you get more for it, and you'd have to clean it out. But it was a larger can, about yay big, and you know, regular can size. That also could be used as a bludgeoning device. You drop a can of Jack Mac into a sock or any kind of can. It's the same thing. It's just a lock in a sock, and it's going to do damage. It is. Talk about it in another video where a guy got cracked on the morning walk coming back from chow. We started smelling it. So what is that, man? Man, that's Jack Mac. What is that smell? And you look over and you see a busted sock with a can. So that was untraceable. Anybody could get a can of Jack Mac. The locks, though, they had that serial number that would trace back to you, unless you stole somebody else. But if they were smart and they'd keep them locked up anyway. But the can of Jack Mac was a problem. People getting hit and split with it. And another reason that they took the canned goods was because you could make knives out of the lids. That's another video of mine I did as well, talking about a prison cutter. And a lot of people might mistake that with an actual knife or a blade, but this is what I'm talking about right here. Prison cutter is the lid from a can, and you take it, you kind of bend it over so you can hold it smoothly without cutting yourself, and you'll actually take the lock and beat the edges down on some concrete, and it'll produce a cutting edge on it so you can chop your sausage up if you're going to cook something, pickles, whatever. If you're cutting food up, this is what you need. So it became a contraband item, and as I used to work in a commissary, I had connections in there with some of the guys. They told me, hey man, we're going to pouches. If you need to get anything, get it while you can. So I thought ahead and said, you know what? I got 21 years. I don't want to be without a cutter, you know? Not for protection or anything like that, but for cooking. Like, legit, that was something I'd do every Friday, make my own meal, you know, just my little reward to myself for not going to Lockup or not getting sent backwards in any type of way, shape, or form. And when I saw the change come in 2 pouches, which eventually did happen, I ended up just saving all my tuna can lids and my Jack Mac lids, and I got a nice little stack of them. You know, it was almost like a little miniature deck of cards. I had probably about 10, 12 lids just on standby, and I would wrap them up inside of a paper bag, fold that thing over, and tape it up under my locker in a spot that was out of the way. Could they find it? Yeah. If anybody was really, really looking for it on like a serious, thorough shakedown, they would find it. But I didn't leave it out in the open. I had a lot of minor cell searches, little stuff where they just come through looking for anything blatant. They never found my cutters. And I took the risk with that because I was like, man, this is going to be contraband. But also, I need a cutter. If I got another 10 years I got to serve, at one point, I was about to serve 14 years on my sentence, and minimum. So I was just trying to prepare for that eventual rainy day. So I saved a bunch of them up, and it was pretty interesting. Later on, people, man, where'd you get that cutter? Man, let me borrow your cutter. I was like, well, you can rent my cutter, you know, for a bag of coffee. Coffee was like $2, or I'd sell them one for, you know, if they had something cool, maybe a CD that I wanted, or whatever, you know, just be open to negotiations. You have something that people can't get and they want, the value goes up. I wasn't trying to make money off anything like that. I was actually trying to just, take care of myself. But that was definitely a contraband item at that point, and I knowingly kept it because I wanted to be able to cut my food. Can you use them for weapons? Yes, absolutely. The worst incident I heard about somebody using a can lid for a act of violence was a guy that worked in the kitchen, and you get those big like Cisco cans, the industrial giant cans of peaches or whatever sauce or whatever they got in them. They'd take that big lid, and the guy folded it over very similarly to this, but what he did was went through and cut teeth into it. These little serrations. I think he used a pair of nail clippers or something, so it wasn't like super clean or crisp or anything. It's not anything you're going to buy. But if you get that and you put some teeth into it, you can do some damage. Now, I'd heard about this. I didn't see the particular incident, but there's a guy who took a giant lid like that with the serrated teeth into it, went up to someone who had a problem with, went up to him on the tier and whoosh, hit him across the stomach, and the guy's guts started to spill out where he had to hold them in with his shirt. And nobody's going to help you because you could be next on the list. You don't know what the beef is. There's really no good Samaritans when it comes to prison violence. You just got to step back and let it happen sometimes, or you're next. So dude went up and he was hitting the call button, calling up, I think I need some help. I need some help. And they was, you sit there, because they're not going to come in and get sliced up with that. So after they locked everybody down, this is how the story went. After they locked everybody back in the cells, then they came and got him out because they didn't want to get hit with it either. And that guy was whisked away and never heard or seen from again. But yeah. So it's a pretty serious thing in the wrong hands. You take one of those and you can open somebody right up. This next one's pretty interesting because I didn't even think about it until the time came for this item to be removed. And we're talking about black clothing. Black clothing was not allowed, period, in the state system in Maryland. It just wasn't allowed because the officers wear black uniforms. I never thought of it, but apparently people could. They were such good seamstress, sewer. I don't know, somebody who sews, whatever you call that, the guy who sews stuff. I don't think you call him. Anyway, these guys would do some wizardry with a needle, and they could do some stuff. So they didn't want anybody to walk out the front door or escape by having black clothing that could be passed off as an officer's outfit. You just never know. It was a major, major concern for the officers there. So you couldn't get black shoes. You couldn't get black shirts. You couldn't get any kind of black shorts. Nothing like that. Like, we used to be able to wear a lot of street clothes in the institution until they came and they took all the colors and everything out because, red, blue, obviously gang colors, and they were there at first when I was there, but then they ended up taking them out. They came through and took everybody's stuff, and you're basically allowed to have white and gray at that point, and that was about it. So no black, no colors. It was very interesting. Bandanas, shorts, t-shirts, pants, anything like that. They couldn't be out of spec, but they let you keep a couple of things when they came to take all the clothes. It was a whole incident, man. They would come through and put a whole bunch of big long tables, and they would inventory you right in the middle of the tier. You come out and you dump all your stuff, and they just take this, take this, take this. Here, you can keep that. This for me. Trash. And that was the end of colored clothing of any sort in there. So contraband, black items for sure. Black clothing, red and blue clothing, because it caused a lot of problems. I had a cell buddy who had a red bandana, and he got pressed up on by the Bloods. And they're like, man, you won't give me that. And he's like, listen, man, if you want to get this from me, I'll sell it to you. But you ain't just going to come take it. So they're like, all right. So they came through and they bought it from him, And it was a good thing he actually sold that before they took everything. So at least he got a couple bucks out of it. And it was maybe a year and a half later they came and took everybody's colored clothes. And the last one I got for you tonight, this is just a short list. It's a couple things. I don't want to talk too long, but it's a stinger. And I did a video on a prison stinger as well. A stinger is something that you use to heat up your water, to be able to get your water nice and hot so that you can make food. You know, a lot of ramen noodles in there, a lot of rice and beans, things like that. You put a little bit of water in it and it cooks up properly. If you want to make some tea, you need some hot water. You want to make a cup of coffee, hot water. And it doesn't get too hot from the sink. And the only other place to get it, if you had a microwave on your tier, those were just the honor tiers where I was at. They were the only ones that had microwaves. But they would have a hot pot. It was just like a giant industrial container that would just heat water. And they'd fill it up in the rec hall, and you'd have a line of people out there just filling up, getting hot water. First thing in the morning, if you weren't one of the first people out there, you weren't getting hot coffee until the next batch was made, and it takes a little while to heat up. So prison stingers, they used to be sold, and they were like a contraption, almost looked like from my understanding, they almost look like one of those really long lighters that you'd use to like start a grill fire or something. And they would just plug it in, and you could stick it into whatever you're doing. It would heat the water up really well, but you would have to make your own stinger because they weren't there anymore. So an old head told me about these when I was first in, and I was like, well, how do I make that? And he gave me the ingredient or the instructions to make it. I did, and I always kept one in my cell after that. I always had hot water. When I come out of the cell in the morning, go to my work detail, I bypass the coffee line, just sitting there bopping on by with some fresh. And most people didn't catch on, but then a couple guys were like, man, how can you drink that stuff cold up out of the sink? And I was like, yeah, you just get used to it. You know, play it off like you ain't got a stinger, which came in real handy when we were locked down for extended periods of time because, man, you get hungry in there. They start bringing you bag lunches. They don't bring trays around, nothing like that. They throw 2 bag lunches in there, some old rotten apple looking thing, and some sweaty meat on some bread, and maybe a couple packs of mustard or something. You get tired of that, so you want to cook something, man. It's an amenity to have a stinger in prison, and I always kept one. I got a video on it. I'll drop the link at the bottom of this here if you want to check that out too, how to make one. So it's a pretty interesting procedure, but those things they're for sure contraband, and if a guard catches you with it, they got every right to put you on lockup if they want to. Fortunately for me, they knew I wasn't really up to nothing, so the guards, when they would see it, usually the younger ones would give me looks when they come in. They're like, what is this? But if I had an older guard that was around them, they'd be like, man, that's a stinger. I said, and they would say my name. They'd be like, hey, inmate, where'd you learn to make that? I don't know, man. It seemed like a good idea. You do anything dumb with it? It's making coffee. It's making coffee. I said, man, just let him keep it. Fortunately, I didn't have any problems with that. So, it is contraband. They could have hemmed me up, but they didn't. Stinger is something that's vital if you want to make your time just a little bit easier, but it's also that risk reward. So, stinger comes in pretty much at the end of the list right here. Those are the contraband items that I remember seeing kind of being more relevant when I was there. There's a lot of little stuff. Like, I mean, you can get into the idea about tobacco, drugs, alcohol, cash, cell phones. I mean, those are known contraband items, but these other ones I was just trying to illuminate a little bit to some of the reasons why there are certain things that are not in there and how people get so creative and find the ingenuity to come up with solutions to whatever they're trying to do. As the quote says, necessity is the mother of invention. So when you need something, that's how a lot of things are created, through need. And there's a need for a lot of these things I talked about in here. The tuna can lid, the dental picks, that kind of stuff. the locks where they got switched around, canned goods. There was reasons that they were taken out, and there was workarounds if you knew who to talk to, or just kind of knew how to hustle the right way. You get around some of this stuff. Well, that's it. That's all I got for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you were in a prison or have heard of anybody else in a prison who had some similar stories about contraband, drop a comment. I'd love to see what I missed and what it might have been like in your state, wherever you were at. I was in the state of Maryland, and this was kind of how it went during that time. So if you've got anything to add to that, drop something in the comments down below, and I can't wait to read it. And just see how things were in other places. Opens my eyes up to what it was like where I was versus how other people did time. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. I do appreciate everybody who watches. Even if you don't like it, thanks for giving me a shot just to hear what I got to talk about. And I also want to give a shout out to my Aussie sub, Tim. I haven't done a video in a long time, but I've always kept you in the back of my mind. You were there from the beginning, and I appreciate you, man. I really do. Just thank you for all your kind words over the course of these videos. I appreciate you a lot, my friend, and I hope that you're doing well. I know it's been a while since I put one up, so I just wanted to let you know I was thinking about you. And as always, the wise man does not get himself into what the smart man has to get himself out of.